Hello everyone, my name is Emil Djernaes. I am the marketing executive at Synology France for the Benelux market, and I will be your webinar host of the day. I hope we have everyone with us. I see that there's quite a few people already in the chat. That's great to see. We should just get going now. This is a webinar on the Active Backup for Business package, which is part of the Active Backup suite. And if we just move forward here in my presentation, we will see that it's a solution we're very proud of, and it has a lot of powerful solutions, bringing a lot of enterprise level backup features to a much more affordable level. But before I get ahead of myself and talk too much about what Active Backup for Business does, and before I show it off to you, I want to talk a little bit about the motivation we have for creating Active Backup for Business. And we can find that motivation in the backup market, because the thing is that in today's IT-driven business environment, data is scattered across various platforms and instances like physical servers, virtual machines, and the cloud. And as a result, SMBs on average have 4.1 more than 4 different backup softwares working in tandem, which takes up a lot of IT resources, and it can be a headache for IT administrators. And if something goes wrong, it can be a headache to find out who you need to call to get the right support. Now, as a result, Synology has been creating Active Backup as a solution to these problems, as a centralized backup platform that can centralize the tasks across these different instances of storage, where the administration is streamlined because there is an integration between hardware and software, which also means that when something goes wrong, you know who to call. It's Synology. So what we want to go through now that we've talked a little bit about the motivation and the market, we can dive into some of the key features that Active Backup for Business provides. It is the member of the Active Backup suite that integrates the backup tasks across PC, server, and virtual machine. And it has the compatibility that can be seen at the bottom of this slide, which means that currently it works with Windows machines, it works with SMB and rsync, and with VMware vSphere. We're working on expanding this roadmap. Next up is Ubuntu and Mac, and we can't say anything about when the compatibility will be expanded, but it's the next up on the roadmap. So what Active Backup for Business does is if we have to find 3 main dimensions of value that it provides, it is that it streamlines management, it maximizes the backup efficiency, and it provides very flexible restore options. We can talk about some of the key features first before we dive in on the hands-on, so that you know what we're going to be taking a look at. First of all, in Streamlined Management, we have the Central Management Console, which is the first window you will see when you open Active Backup for Business. It will show you all of the devices you're backing up. It will show you the calendar of backup. If anything has gone wrong in the logs, it will show you the total amount of storage taken up by the backups and so forth. And another Streamlined Management function is what we call template deployment, where an IT administrator can create a template for a backup retention schedule and also how the frequency of the backup, and then he can push it to different layers of the organization with the click of a button, making everything as simple as possible for the IT administrator. For maximizing backup efficiency, we have 2 core functionalities. We have global deduplication, and we have change block tracking, which work together to create a very a much more efficient and in terms of the resources it uses backup schedule than otherwise possible. Global deduplication, you're probably familiar with the technology, so I'm just gonna describe it quickly. It identifies a certain block of data, and then it looks across the next backups that it conducts. It looks for the same block of data, and if it has already been backing up this block before, it does not need to back it up again. So for example, if you have 100 computers that all run Windows 10 of the same version, then it only needs to back up Windows 10 once, and then it can ignore all the other versions it finds out there. And that becomes pretty powerful when you have a big IT infrastructure, and the bigger it is, well, the greater the benefit, basically. So that's what reduces the amount of storage necessary. What change block tracking does is making the backup tasks much faster than they would otherwise be. And this works through BTRFS, butterface, where it identifies the incremental change between two backup images, and it does this lightning fast, so that a backup of an entire computer can be reduced from taking several hours to just taking a few seconds or maybe a few minutes. So that's maximized backup efficiency and some of the core functionalities there. If we then look at the flexible restore options, what Active Backup provides is everything from a single file restore option to a full machine, bare metal level restore with all of the settings of the machine. And if we start with the first one for restoring a single file, we have the Active Backup for Business portal, which without interference from any IT administrators allows the user to dive into any previously backed up image of their computer and then retrieve a single file or a group of files on an entire subsection of their computer from a previous point in time. And the diametric opposite of that is the BareMetal Restore, which I'm also going to explain how it works when we get to the hands-on. But it essentially works with installing a little recovery media file on a USB stick that only takes up a few megabytes. Then you can boot your computer from this USB stick, and it will facilitate communication with the Active Backup server, and it will basically just restore the computer from this previous image. It's really simple and a very powerful function, as you will see. So that's some of the, for physical servers, the restore functionalities. For virtual machines, we also have a pretty interesting package for you. We have first the full restore, which is where you take a backed up image of a virtual machine and you push it out from your Synology NAS into your VMware production site, and you reinstall it at a previous point in time. It's kind of like a BareMetal Restore, just for a virtual machine. But sometimes that takes a lot of time to do. The files can be very big. And as a result, we also have included this other functionality called Instant Restore, which is where you essentially run the backed up image of the virtual machine directly from within the Synology NAS. So basically the Synology backup server will facilitate the communication to the production site. And well, the downtime will be next to zero, basically. And then while you're working on this kind of disaster recovery backup server, you can safely make the full restore of the virtual machine and have everything up and running with minimum downtime. This becomes even more radical when you have Virtual Machine Manager and Active Backup for Business working at the same time. Because, well, what this means is essentially if you have your production site, as we can see on this slide, and it all just burns up in flames. It goes up in flames in a matter of, well, before you know it, everything's gone. But fortunately, you have Active Backup for Business backing up all your physical servers, all of your virtual machines. So you can boot up Synology Virtual Machine Manager, and you can simply put all the images of these backed up devices into Virtual Machine Manager and have everything back up and running in no time. Of course, it requires quite a lot of computing resources to do so. So you would need to have some powerful Synology rigs to pull this off. But it is possible to at least take the most essential machines that run critical business functions, for example, and have everything running on this disaster recovery platform. Then while you restore your production site again, you can export the different new, if you from VMM, from Virtual Machine Manager of Synology, have all of these devices running in their backup images, then you can create new backup images of those and export them back into your production site, as we can see here with this beautiful animation on this slide. And well, everything will be running just fine again. So that's some of the key functionalities of Active Backup for Business. And before we move on, it's important to point out that what we envision is that this solution will be perfect for SMBs in particular, because it takes a lot of enterprise backup functionalities, as I said in the beginning, and makes them more available and more accessible for smaller businesses. And that's especially because Active Backup for Business comes for free with any Synology NAS of the Plus series or above that you purchase. And that's definitely something that we think will, well, we hope that will make a difference out there for all those businesses that need a better backup solution. We see 3 different scenarios where SMBs should really consider using Active Backup, and let's just quickly try to go through them. There's the first scenario where it's usually small businesses that do not have a clear backup strategy. Like they have some PCs, they have maybe a few virtual machines, they have a central server, but if they really think about it, they don't have a clear strategy for how they back everything up. You know, it's definitely not on a consistent basis. And in this situation, it cannot be overemphasized how important it is that you actually make sure to have a good backup strategy. Some of these numbers on this slide definitely tells that story. And yet our research shows that still 50% of SMBs, they remain unprepared in case of disaster. So have a backup strategy, very important. That's the first thing. Then even if you have a backup strategy, it can be too complicated. Maybe you're one of the businesses that have more than 4 backup solutions working in tandem, and it's driving your IT administrators insane, and it's taking a lot of resources in your business, both human and economic, because it takes a lot of power and so forth. And that's where Active Backup for Business can unclutter all of the noise, make it much more simple, and also put the power in the hands of the employees that can restore files on their own. And it will also make it much more affordable, because that's the third scenario where maybe you are already using an advanced backup solution that integrates the backup tasks. But even in this instance, it might be very expensive, because usually these other sophisticated backup solutions are paid on a license basis and per node basis. So if you have a very big business, it very quickly scales up and it can become very complicated. But the thing is that when you have Active Backup for Business, you don't even need to have a particularly big Synology device before you can back up a whole lot of machines. And that's with this that we're going to move into the demo, into the hands-on. I've prepared a little, let's see here, I've prepared a little demo for you. Let's just move my camera up here so that I don't take too much space and you can't see what's going on anymore. So if we boot up my DS1618 Plus here, that we use at Synology, and go into Active Backup for Business, the first thing we will see is the interface I showed you in one of the slides, the central management console. And if we just look at some of the stuff that's going on here, we can see that I'm backing up 3 PCs, 1 physical server, 7 virtual machines, and 1 file server. We can also see that in my backup calendar that something has been going wrong for the last 4 days. And don't worry, that's on purpose. That's because I wanted to have something to show you guys. We're going to look at what is wrong here and what could be a solution that Synology can provide. And then if we go further down on this view, we can see the log of the various backup tasks that have been performed. We can see the total amount of storage that's taken up by all of these devices that are being backed up. Right now, it should be a total of 120 plus 500 plus 130, so 750 gigabytes. Yet, after deduplication, we have 360 gigabytes. So that's less than half of what it's supposed to take up. And that's with relatively few machines. This scales very quickly if you have more machines running in your IT infrastructure, which you're probably pretty likely to have. Then down here, we can see a timeline of how the different how much data has been transferred over different days. You can see here on the, or hopefully you can see it, on the 30th of January, a lot happened. Basically 550 gigabytes of data was transferred on the 30th of January, which was when I set this demo site up for you guys. And since then, well, since we were at 550 approximately, since then 200 gigabytes have been added over the next 1.5 weeks or so. So that's some of the information you can see here. There's of course more to it, and we'll dive into it one step at a time, because first we have the PCs that are backed up, and let's take a look at them here. These are 3 of my colleagues' computers. And if we go take a look at, well, for example, this one, it's one of my colleagues that has been backing this up. The way you would do this is basically, there's a download link on our website. And also if you click on this button here, add device, you will be prompted to download the Active Backup for Business client on your PC. And then from there, you just put in the credentials of the administrator, and well, the backup will automatically be connected to this backup server running Active Backup for Business. So that's as easy as that. Once you've done that, it will automatically create a backup task. Let's see, here we have the same computer. And let's look at some of the different options you have for this. You have, first of all, the option to create a BareMetal backup or a system volume backup. And the BareMetal backup is, of course, the one where you not only take the files, but you also take all of the settings of the computer. You can basically restore the entire machine to a previous point in time. Then if we look at schedule, we can choose different times that we want to back up to occur on an automatic basis. For example, it can be daily, it can be in the weekend, or it can be in the weekdays. And you can choose whether it should occur once per day or if it should occur on an hourly basis. So basically you can make sure that you never lose anything more than 1 hour. But then how long do you keep these different backup images? You can also choose here to either keep all versions or to apply a more sophisticated method of rotation. So here I've defined that I want to keep all versions for every hour of the first 7 days. Then after 7 days, I want to keep one version per day until 31 days. And I want to keep, for the first 31 days, I have 1 copy per day. But then afterwards, I've defined down here that I keep 1 version per month for 24 months. And then afterwards, I keep 1 version per year for 10 years. So in this way, I can be sure that I can go almost infinitely back in time without taking too much storage. And then I can make sure that the newer versions are kept at a higher frequency and closer to each other. So I have more flexibility in regaining the most recent stuff. So that's the options you have here for setting up different backup tasks. And we can see if I now, let's see, when did I back this computer up the last time? Let me just try to back up my colleague's computer right now. I backed it up the last time. Well, looks like it should be today. Well, but anyway, I can click on backup here for this computer. We can go into details. I hope the computer is turned on now, because of course it's a requirement that the computer needs to be on and running somewhere with the network connection before it can actually back anything up. Anything else would be downright strange if it was possible. So right now it's trying to estimate what the difference is between, well, in the case that the computer is turned on, it's estimating the difference between the two. But we can see already, it's identified that since the last time that a backup was conducted, there's been a change of 1.5 gigabytes of data. So now it's backing this up at a rate of 123 megabytes per second. So basically, let's see how quickly this gets done. We've been running for less than a minute now, and it's almost already done. And this is an entire computer of one of my colleagues that we're backing up. And it's changed block tracking that makes this possible. And it's quite remarkable. Boom, 1 minute and we're done. We have a new backup image of the entire machine. It's pretty incredible. So now let's see, we can see that it's easy and fast and it reduces the storage of the machines that we need to back up. But what if I want to go back and restore some files? What I can do is I can choose the machine I want to dive into. So let's just take the same computer. Then I click on Restore and I go for the Open Restore Portal. And when I open the Restore Portal, I immediately get a different window where I will get all of the different images of this machine. We can see here we have the choice between all the different machines that have been backed up. I take the Auto machine, and then the first thing you have to notice here is that the bottom, yes, I see that you can see that over there in stream. At the bottom, you have a timeline, and you can simply like grab it and drag it along and go to the point in time that you want to go. If we, for example, go back to the 4th of February, I can click there. I can see I made 3 different versions at 3 different points in time of this computer. I backed it up 3 times. And if I want to go back to this particular backup, it will basically show me every single file that was on the computer at this point in time. It even shows me the different partitions of the different hard drives, or however your computer is set up. So I can go here to the C folder and I can dive in. I can either actually right click on, for example, program files. Then I can click restore. And then it tells me here that if I click OK, it will actually go into my colleague's computer and it will restore the file. You don't even need to download it or anything. It will basically just revert it back in time, that particular folder in the computer. So that's a powerful function. But I want to dive down and I want to find a very particular file, like maybe an Adobe Acrobat Reader. I have some sort of, maybe a virus, no, that would make sense here, but I could have any kind of file in here that, there was an empty folder, so that was convenient. But I can dive infinitely far down and I can restore any file or I can download it from any given point in time. So that's a pretty powerful function. I hope that this gave you an idea of how it works with the Restore portal, just at least to some extent. Because now we're going to be moving on to the next function, which is the BareMetal Restore. And I can't demonstrate a BareMetal Restore for you, because then this computer that I'm on now would be restored to a previous point in time. But I can explain to you how it works. So that it may be more intuitive for you if you happen to stand in this situation. You could want to do a BareMetal Restore, for example, if you have been attacked by malware, some sort of malware that wants to harm your business, and you want to be sure that it's not in the system, so you want to revert to a previous point in time. Then what you do is that you create a recovery media, and we have a little guide here that explains how it works. And essentially what it will prompt you to do is download something called the Active Backup Recovery Media. I think that's what it's called. I have it ready for you here. Let's see. It's called Synology Restore Media Creator. And you can download it from our website or from that guide that I showed you there. And what you do is that you basically click here, Restore Media. And well, it opens here. It should, I hope it doesn't have to install this. No, it doesn't. Okay, super. So what you can see here is that it basically asks whether I want to have an ISO file saved somewhere or if I want to use a USB key. I think it's the easiest to use a USB key. It's more intuitive. So what you can do is you can take your little, can you see it here? Your little Synology USB, cute little thing. And then you just plug it into your computer. You click on USB support. It creates this file, and then you can shut down your computer. When you reboot it, you hold F2, go into the BIOS, and you tell your computer to boot from the USB. And once that is done, the contact will be facilitated to the Active Backup for Business server. You can choose which point in time you want to restore your computer to, and it will run all by itself. So that's really intuitive and very easy to do. It does take some time, of course. It's a very big file that you need to download, but it will happen. We can show that off in a future webinar. It will need a slightly different setup if that's necessary. If you want to see that, you can definitely just you can write it into the chat. We will take that into account. And then we can make a different kind of setup where maybe I have a different computer and I can try to make a BareMetal Restore with that computer. But I hope it was clear enough like this. So that's for the PCs. That's the different options we have to run restores. Now I want to jump down to the virtual machines, because that's also where something really interesting is happening. That's where I've kind of prepared something for you. I connected this computer to, and this backup server, I connected it to our VMware production site here. We have a VMware account here, and we have some virtual machines. But now I deleted the connection, which kind of simulates that the server has gone down. It's burst into flames, and now it can't make connection anymore. And that's what you can see here. It keeps trying to make connection, but nothing's happening. And for that reason, every time I try to back up on this task, something will go wrong. So what I could do in this case, because maybe I have this Ubuntu server here, and let's say that it runs a very critical business function. I need it up and running. I can't wait until we have put out the flames and we've got everything back up and working again. So I click on restore here, and I would like to instantly restore. Since my VMware server is gone, what I want to do is restore it right now on the DS1618 Plus that is running active backup for business here. So I just click next. I choose which image I want, and since it's a disaster recovery, I want the most recent one. Let's take that one. We get a little prompt here. Now it's from Virtual Machine Manager. That's why it blinked a little bit, because now it's taking over. It's Virtual Machine Manager taking over. I define that it's this NAS that I want to run the restoration procedure on. The reason why it asks me what NAS I want to use is that when you run VMM Pro, Virtual Machine Manager Pro, you can combine up to 7 NAS devices into one virtualization cluster, so you can restore a whole lot of machines if you have some powerful NAS devices running like this. Then if I click next, I define how much processing power I want it to have. Let's just, for fun, give it 3 cores here, and then say that I want to give it 1500 megabytes of RAM. I click next, we just call it Ubuntu. I don't need to put an ISO file. There's no need for that when you run Ubuntu. And then I just click next. Auto start defines whether I want it to start by itself whenever the NAS is turned on. That's not necessary. This is only a disaster recovery. And well, basically everything else is perfectly fine. You can just keep going. You define that the administrator is going to be the one that has access, and you define that you want the virtual machine to be powered on after creation. Let's try to see what happens. It immediately opens Virtual Machine Manager, and you can see that it's already imported it. I was talking quite a lot while we did this, but in reality, if you just click next, this process probably take around 10 seconds for you. And then when I power it on now, it will basically start. I can connect to it just like you would expect with any other piece of virtualization software. I click here, connect, and then I'm in here. You can see it's an interface that works with like a software mouse. So right now the mouse is on my computer, but if I move it into the Ubuntu virtual machine, well, it will basically register that now that one is taking over. But I can just move the mouse out of that frame whenever I want, and then everything will be, I will be back on my own machine. So this one should be starting in just a second, and if you want to bear with me, oh, there we go, and that went pretty quickly. And remember that this is the most recent backed up image, so it's a perfect copy of this virtual machine. Let's see here, I just write Synology. Oops, yeah, that's my login. I think I just gave away there, but whatever, it's just a demo. And now it's working. You see, I can just move seamlessly in and out of the virtual machine. And that you can do this with all your virtual machines, and then you can have everything back up and running in almost no time. So let's go back again to, to go out there. Yes, now we're back into active backup. Let me just stop this one again, because it does take some processing power right now. Force the shutdown, and then I can just delete it again when it's off, but I'll do that afterwards. Can I just do that now? Yeah. Delete, and whoop, it is out of our life. Great. So let's go back to active backup for business. In essence, what just happened, you can do that with virtual machines, and you can do it with your computer as well. So here I have in physical server, this is my own computer that's been backed up as a physical server. And when that is done, I can do the exact same thing as with the virtual machine. Look at this, I click on restore, I go to instant restore to Synology Virtual Machine Manager, I click next, I choose what image, and I do the exact same thing that I did before. So it doesn't matter what kind, if it's virtual or physical machine, you can have everything imported into your NAS device. Again, you can do this because maybe you're somehow destroyed the computer, or maybe it can be because you want to test a different configuration of the machine. You want to test a piece of software and maybe a completely different configuration of the computer, and you don't want to mess with you don't want to mess with your colleagues' computers, so you can basically toy around with this backup image, and you can make any settings you want in this way. So really powerful functionality. It has the same, both like PC, physical server, file server, and virtual machine have the same options in terms of the tasks you can create. You can still go into physical server and decide if it's a bare metal, you can go decide the schedule, the retention, and who has access to this machine. That's some of the core functions of Active Backup for Business. And really what you might notice, and what I'm trying to emphasize, is that for almost all of the platforms, although they're very different, and it's normally you can get different backup pieces of software for each different platform, here we have not only included everything in the same piece of software, we have also really tried to streamline it so that you can identify many of the same functionalities independently of whether it's a physical machine or a server or a virtual machine. It should at least make it as easy as possible to really manage. But we're not completely done yet. There may be some other functions that you would like to just see very quickly, like these bottom 4 subsections of the software. How do they work? Well, on storage, what you can simply see is the deduplication ratio. So you can see here right now, it's 2.11. That means that if we take the full amount of data that's backed up, and then we divide that by 2.11, then we get the amount of storage that's taken up right now. So it's less than half of what it was supposed to take up that is achieved through global deduplication. If we go to restore status, you can see any restoration processes that are currently happening. For example, if you're making a full restore for virtual machine, or if you're making a bare metal restore of your computer. If you go to activities, this one is pretty important. You can see the logs of, you define how many logs you want to keep, and I think the standard is 1 million logs, so that should be enough for most purposes. Then you can see like how all of the tasks have occurred. You can see if anything has gone wrong, and whenever you can see an error, you can immediately just click on some of, like on this little icon here, and you can see what has gone wrong, so you can very quickly fix whatever issue there might be. Under report, which is also a very important function, you can schedule reports to be sent to your email in case you don't want to go on the NAS every day or all the time, but you just want to get a report on a daily basis to ensure that everything's working. Or maybe you want to send it to a manager or something like this. I've created a daily report here of the little infrastructure that I'm backing up in this demo site. And if I click on open report, then I can see how things have been working out over the past 24 hours. So here we can see there were quite a lot of error messages yesterday. These are all the error messages. And also it's in Danish. I'm sorry about that. That's because I'm Danish. So don't mind the weird words, but this basically means this is all the warnings of errors that have occurred. And if you get a report like this, then there's definitely something you should take a look at. In this instance, the reason why I'm getting so many error messages is because I disconnected our VMware server. So suddenly nothing could be backed up, and I'd set it to back up every hour. So for every hour of the day, it identified that there were seven virtual machines that could not be backed up. When we go further down, we can see that this actually looks a lot like the central management console. So we can also see how much storage is being taken up in total, how much is used after deduplication. We can see which users are taking up the most storage. So for example, if you see that there's one particular computer, one particular employee that is using extra much storage, then you can just reach out to him and say, hey, why is your computer changing so much all the time? Or at least it can give you some information about where there's a lot of activity occurring. And that's basically, that's the report that makes everything a little bit easier to get an overview of. Let's go back here. And the last one, very importantly, in settings, you can define how many machines can be backed up at the same time. It does take up some processing power of the NAS to back these things up, but you can choose quite a lot. And as we saw, a backup task usually, unless it's the first time it's done, a backup task does usually not take more than a minute, depending on your network connection as well and everything. But it shouldn't take much more than that. So usually it's just fine to have I've set it to 5. I don't have that many, of course, but if it's backing up on a daily or hourly basis, usually it's just fine. But you can of course adjust it up if you want. Then in template, we have what I was talking about in the presentation, where you can create a backup template. So I can, for example, say this one I want it to be administrators. The administrator's computer needs to be backed up very often and rigidly. So I can define a group that I want to be this to apply to, and I want the administrators to be adhering to this template of backup. So I click on administrators. I define whether it's a PC or physical server I want it to be backed up to, because it can be both. As you may have noticed, the line between a PC and a physical server is kind of blurred, and there's only a difference in terms of functionality. When you back up to PC, you can create the BareMetal recovery media. When it's a physical server, you can run the physical server as a virtual machine. So it depends upon what you want, but usually PC will be just fine. There's no problem. There's no real other difference than that. And then if you go to next, you will have the same thing we saw before. Where does the backup occur? Well, we want it to be in the folder that's called Active Backup for Business. We go to next. We want it to be bare metal backups. We define the retention schedule. We define how many versions we want to keep for how long. Then we click apply, and then boom, it's working. Then everything will be set up. So I think that's pretty much the core functionalities I wanted to show off here for you today. You're free to write any questions in the chat that you might have. I will also stay here for a little bit and keep an eye on the questions you're asking. If you want to see more, or if there's any particular area that you don't feel like I covered in enough detail, feel free to let us know. We're always open to your feedback, and we can definitely run more webinars to cover Active Backup for Business. We are also going to send out a little questionnaire where you can give me your evaluation, and you can also let us know what you would like the next webinar to be on. If you have any requests for Active Backup for Business, or maybe you want to move on to VMM, as you just saw a little bit of here, and hopefully you found interesting. We can also talk about Active Backup for Office 365 or for G Suite, and try to see how these functions work and how all of the Active Backup suite can work together to make all of your backup tasks simpler. Anything you want to talk about, really. About Virtual Machine Manager, I can probably just say that it is absolutely for free. The normal version is for free, so you can basically get this entire setup that I just showed you here, but just purchasing any Synology NAS that is at least a Plus model. So even the 218 Plus can be used to conduct some pretty complex backup tasks now, and to take basic virtual machines into VMM. Of course, it doesn't have so much processing power, so it's really a question of what kind of virtual machines you want to put in there. But it can handle quite some things, and it can go all the way up to our biggest flash stations, of course, where you will be able to do much more complex and heavy computing tasks. If you have questions about what kind of NAS you should use for this setup and for your business, we have the NAS selector on our website, where you can define how big your business is, how often you want to back up, so forth and so forth. And then it will basically give you a bunch of NASs that fit the most with your criterias, and then from there it will be much easier. We have a lot of models of NAS devices, so this should definitely help out quite a bit. So yeah, that was it for now. Thank you very much for your time, and see you in the next one.